Hello and welcome to the 387th episode of The Crate and Crowbar, a podcast about gaming. On the night that we're recording this, it is Tuesday the 7th of December 2021. I'm Alex Wiltshire and tonight I'm joined by Tom Senior.
Hello.
Oh, my tongue.
What's wrong? What's with the tongue? What's going on?
It's getting confused.
Oh dear.
I'll tell you what it's confused about, Tom.
Mm.
It's confused about something you talked about last time you were on the pod.
Yeah.
Radiohead's Amnesiac. In fact, I don't even know how you pronounce it, but Amnesiac free game thing?
Immersive sort of audiovisual album thing. Made of
Experience
made of scraps and full songs from a couple of Radiohead's albums, I think.
I think it's awesome, and I think you do too.
I do. I like it very much.
But I'm also really confused by it. Have you seen the QR codes that you see kind of distributed around on walls and things in different rooms?
Yeah, I did see those. I couldn't be bothered to reach for my phone to actually snap them. Are they kind of like weird Easter eggs or something?
No. Yes, also no. They're links to the Radiohead sort of merch website.
There it is, for the free game on the surface, but here the microtransactions. That's obviously what they're going for.
It is. It's absolutely been, and I just don't really know what they're getting at because, like, they're not evidently satirical.
Mm.
They're not evidently making fun of or questioning rampant consumerism. And they are just products. I mean, they're cool looking, like a set of 5 greetings cards with a bit of Radiohead art on the front there. The 2022 calendar. A holographic sticker set. An embroidered patch set. An enamel pin set. Lots of sets. Cross-stitch patch set. A letter set, transfer alphabet. I mean, it's all it is classy.
Do these products actually exist?
Well, this is it. Maybe they don't. You kind of buy them, and then actually, you just sort of, you kind of get some sort of sternly worded email from Tom York saying, "What the fuck are you doing? You're destroying the earth. You're you're betraying your, the beauty of your humanity by
one day, sometime in the future, like a member of Radiohead buzzes your door and then gives you a kiss on the forehead and then vanishes into the fog."
Yeah.
It kind of feels like the way you described it. It sounds like some sort of joke, but I guess you can't see the angle really. I can't imagine.
Well, I can clarify that the letter set, which is the font that you see on the cover of the album and stuff, it's classy shit. £50, that is.
Whoa.
Limited run of 100 of them. Sold out.
They're already sold out?
Yeah. But, all gone.
Well, it works then.
But you can still pre-order the cross-stitch designs. So that's good.
Kind of Kid A Amnesiac cross-stitch is an inherently funny object.
Yeah, I know. God. But also, like, these are all pre-order products as well. Like, they're not made yet. This is like it's in the same kind of economy as the Kickstarter world, and kind of just the buy the thing before products. You even get to touch it or understand whether read any reviews or anything. God, it's absolutely bizarre. I mean, at least it explains how the kind of the experience that you download and play exists, like that it's this sort of basically just a sales tool, because that thing is big and like it must be expensive to make, and it's
so elaborate as well.
Elaborate, yeah, and like it's full of like music, like it's their music that you would normally buy in some form. Absolutely bananas. I suppose this is. I mean, I don't think I'm questioning it. I mean, I sound like I am, but I suppose. I mean, it's probably good. I mean, it's better than lots of other things. It's better than the fact that Radiohead were also put in the skins in Fortnite.
Were they?
Yeah, that little bear thing. The bear character.
The amnesiac bear.
Yeah,
in the artwork. I thought you meant actual members of Radiohead.
Yeah, there's little Tom York running about. I mean, I would buy that. I mean, everybody would. Everybody in Fortnite would just be Tom York.
Imagine how much they could charge for that. It'd be so good. It's a weird. That's a very strange clash. It's always like, I guess we need to monetize this somehow.
Yeah.
So what's the kind of oddest way that we could do it? Like, sell the music? Nah, let's sell cross stitch instead.
Yes. I must admit, I assumed that it was like some sort of Unreal, some sort of Epic based sort of thing where they just want to promote Unreal Engine or something like that, because it's like on PC that it's free on Unreal, the Epic Game Store, isn't it?
Yeah, it's free on the PS5 as well.
Yeah,
it's quite an odd thing to drop onto the store as well, and I think it feels like a prestigious, really nicely made thing. And I think I said on the last pod that of the kind of types of thing that have existed before, this is one of the most polished and elaborate and effective, I think, in terms of, what have you occupied the audio universe in strange, abstract ways.
Yeah.
And I think it does hit that point. So I really enjoyed it, but it's very funny. I did not notice the clever monetization, which also does require you to scan a QR code on your computer screen, which is also really. I wonder how many people have done that. I wonder what their click-through rates are on that.
Enough to sell 100 electro
yeah,
sets.
Lots of electro sets. I guess if you're that into the band and you really love it that much, maybe that you're the sort of person who might do that. I don't know. That's fun though. I didn't know that about it.
Have you seen that there's a Matrix one coming too?
Yeah, it's another experience.
More experience.
There was some hyperbole around it. I can't remember the precise wording, but it did suggest it might change game narratives forever, which is the sort of thing that makes me just obviously it won't, but the sheer gall of it, and I think all of they've released so far is just a close up of a digital rendering of Keanu Reeves' face, which was admittedly impressive, and also does kind of feed into the narrative that Keanu Reeves does want to become a digital entity ultimately. Like as he evolves into his final form, he will become some sort of Zordon figure who exists as a ghost in the machine. And it's a cool idea to tie in with the Matrix. And to me, the Matrix always deserved better games. This isn't going to be a game that, like, in any sense, it's probably going to be like look around Keanu Reeves flat. And then a mirror does something weird. I mean, it's probably going to be that level of stuff. But it felt like that universe was almost so video gamey in its conception that it deserved a really good kind of third-person fighting game or something. And there were versions of that on the PS2 and stuff, but for me, they all fell a bit short.
Did you play Enter the Matrix?
Is that the MMO they did? Or was that the...
I think it's the absurdly ambitious PS2 era.
I think I played that one. I think I have played that one.
Yeah,
it's not basically a tour of the fights that you see in the game, almost, isn't it? Or is
but it was meant to be. It was meant to be part of the story, like an explicit part of the arc of the Matrix kind of story.
It followed Naomi, I think, didn't it? Which was kind of one of the characters, part of the crew who didn't get much screen time, but it kind of spun out her story into a whole game series.
Yeah,
which is a cool idea.
But it wasn't a very good game.
Very good, though, unfortunately.
There's some good. I'll try and dredge them up for the show notes, but there were some good articles about the total car crash that was the development of that game.
Oh gosh, that sounds. I would read that. Yeah, sounds good.
Well, hey, what have you been playing?
I've been playing a game called Solar Ash from Heart Machine, the developers of Hyperlight Drifter.
Oh, yes. A colourful game.
The colourful game. And they both have very similar colour palettes, actually. A kind of jade green and electric pink combo is pretty much is the type of colour relationship you see throughout Hyperlight Drifter and this game as well. Hyperlight Drifter was a kind of top-down action adventure, which is like a very combat-focused game, very difficult one, actually, which required lots of dodging and precise attack timings in order to progress in a mysterious pixelated world full of like giant god machines looming in the background as you kind of die repeatedly trying to traverse these areas. It was very cool, very enigmatic and beautiful as well, and I really liked it.
Yeah, me too.
Solar Ash has a lot of some of the similar visual ideas, but it's instead a game about skating across the landscape, giant 3D landscapes, very open environments, and you basically have to find. It's quite repetitive. You have to skate across the landscape until you find little gooey pockets, and then you have to race across these gooey pockets, which if you spend too much time touching them, they turn bright red and instantly kill you, which is unfortunate and quite irritating. In order to stay alive and reset the timer on the goo that is about to kill you in 10 seconds, you have to hit these vials that appear, and you don't know where the next vial's going to be until you've hit the first one.
Tom, I
It's
don't
also
like the
quite
sound
irritating.
of that.
It's also quite annoying, unfortunately. Just because if it was absolutely seamless and it was impossible to mess up, which it almost is, to be honest, it would be fine. But instantly dying and being reset and then having to go back to a thing, the idea that there's a kind of 3D structure and parts that are covered in goo, and you don't know where the start, you know where the start is, but you don't know where the end is or what convoluted route around it's going to take until you get to the final node, which is always this red eye that comes out of the goo. You stab it, the goo disappears, you win. Good. But you have to do that a lot of times. And apart from that, once you've done a few of those, the area's kind of boss monster pops out, and it's kind of Shadow of the Colossus style thing. We have to go onto its back, skate around, hitting more of these vials, while the creature does exactly the same thing the goo does. It very quickly gets very hot, and then you instantly die. And apart from that, there are sort of caskets to find in certain corners of the area. There's lots of sort of pink hovering globs everywhere that you pick up, and if you get enough of them, you get to an extra armor point for your suit. And it screenshots beautifully and it looks amazing. When you see videos, the reason why I posted it up was because I saw videos. It's like, wow, look at how fast you move and look at how fluid this thing is. But the framework is really, really tedious. It's really boring. And there's a story, like initially, like it's a really cool setup. You play as a character, I think, called Ray, who is a very awesome opening moment, is standing on an asteroid in space next to a black hole. And then she latches onto a passing asteroid and gets sucked into it. And she's a void runner, and her job is to go into the black hole, which has swallowed up many different worlds, and has to kind of like dig out this beacon that is sucking her planet into the black hole from inside the hole itself. So the worlds within are these mashed up environments that are kind of held together by this blue cloud, but often land masses that are arranged in arcane ways with convenient kind of skater pathways across them. Very cool to look at. Really, really nice kind of atmosphere to it. But then, like, you do have to do things in the game. And the actual skating and the boost mechanics and the lassoing off kind of like hovering grapple points, all that stuff just works because it works in every game that has that stuff if it's well executed. I was talking recently about Ratchet and Clank Rift Apart, and how Insomniac basically put all of the movement mechanics that they understand work and are fun into one game, and sort of then you get to chain them together in sort of parkour sequences that lead you around these amazing environments. And it works. Like, it is fun, and it's a kind of low friction way to have a very cinematic time, a time where you can focus a lot on the spectacle without having to worry too much about what your character's doing. So it's a very effective way to showcase the world, but it can't really be the only thing you do, I think, unless there has to be something else. So there has to be it's a gripping story to it, or to be honest, like an even more interesting aesthetic. Like the color palette for the thing is very, very consistent. I think we're about halfway through it. All the areas kind of are structured differently and have different themes, but they basically look and feel the same to move around. So what you're left with is something that kind of felt like a beautiful piece of concept art and a beautiful kind of initial demo that hasn't quite been fleshed out into something that's consistently interesting for more than about 90 minutes.
Yeah, it sounds like the goo thing is like something that you'd find almost in like a Mario game that would be you'd play for a couple of levels and then it would just leave it behind. Yeah.
I think actually that's a really good shout, because maybe if one area had that, and then one area had one of these big monsters, and then each level used those amazing, really exciting feeling traversal mechanics to do other things, to accomplish different objectives, then I think that would do a lot to help it. It feels as though I'm just kind of already in this rote rhythm with the thing that is kind of like a bit disappointing. And I think I've been more negative than almost everything I've read about the game, unfortunately. So I apologize to like if I'm being too mean to it, but I don't know. Like, it's something I would probably pick up for like a tenner if I wanted something pretty to look at on a Sunday for a couple of hours. But I don't think I'm going to finish it, unfortunately, because I think it's kind of a lot of reviewers talking about how frictionless it is, and that's like a very deliberate choice. The movement systems are really, really frictionless. It's
I
very
was going to
hard
ask you how it felt
traversal.
because that's something I really enjoyed about Hyper Light Drifter. It was the feel of movement was really good.
Yeah, it feels really nice. I think in combat, it feels imprecise because there isn't like a very precise dodge type activity. But essentially, you've got this launching dash. So if you press the right trigger, you can just like explode forwards at massive distance. And if you kind of mash the attack button while you're thrusting it towards enemies, you could basically take them out. They're not. If you really enjoyed Hyper Light Drifter, this is not a combat game in that vein at all. Like the enemies are really easy to solve. There's no particular like attack patterns you really have to worry about. Occasionally there might be some on the walls that can snipe you for a distance, but it's trivial to get to them, and a few slashes, typical slashes, will just take them out. And so it's that they're sort of there to. I don't know why they're there really. Try and offer some sort of novelty as you go around the area. So it's something to think about as you're going towards the next kind of like sludge patch.
So what do you do, like, apart from finding the next sludge patch, like what are you thinking about when you're kind of in the bits between? Are you meant to be kind of enjoying the environments or something?
Yeah.
Or?
I think you're meant to be enjoying the environments and looking for the next sort of ramp up somewhere, looking for like a glowing blue little spike of light that is one of these caskets that lets you unlock a piece of armor. And you have to get 5 of them, and I really can't be bothered to find them. It's like I'll find 2 just because I happen to cross them, but I'm not going to hunt around these areas. Then the areas themselves aren't that interesting beyond like they look very nice as you're passing through them very quickly, but there's nothing particularly interesting about them apart from that. It's actually the faster I move through the game, the more happier I feel. If I ever have to stay and look around a place, I'm like, well. It sort of looks pretty on the surface, but isn't interesting. Like there's something like about just geometry and the way that you feel, like the way that places can surround you and lead you through closed and open environments that this doesn't really have. It just feels like you can't just like plop some ruins on a map and then zoom through them and then think that that's some sort of that's interesting texture.
It's like, look, this place doesn't have a history. Okay, bye.
Yeah, it's like if you stop and look at it, there's nothing to be seen. Like. Maybe that's harsh, but I think the reason is because I felt so understimulated by the rhythm of the game and the particular tasks at hand that I went looking for something else somewhere. Like, and even in the soundtrack, which is occasionally very nice, it's often quite. It often isn't there really. There's a couple of very repetitive themes that come in when you're fighting big bosses and stuff that quickly sort of become old, and it kind of misses the mark for me. If it's going to be this kind of skating experience, there are just like it feels like it has to be purely that and there's something more exciting. I just come back to for some reason I think of Thumper, which is a very, very different game, but Thumper is an extremely simple game with very simple commands, but the sheer power of the environment and the soundtrack is transcendent for that game. Like it makes it this crazy horror experience that is really unexpected, and that's because it creates loads of interest and novelty and sort of visual friction, audio friction, outside of the main mechanics of the thing. If you're just on a completely like white box level with no skybox, that thing doesn't work. Like you're just sort of pressing left bumper, right bumper. But they generate enough interest outside of the pure mechanics to make it cool, and that feels like Solar Ash needs more of that. Like your idea of having those traversal mechanics applied to stuff other than the goo thing is precisely what it needs, I think.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I'd never have. Yeah, from an outside, I've never have made a link with. Oh my God! You just said the name of the game.
Oh, Thumper.
Thumper, yeah.
Yeah, I mean it not to like compare it in like aesthetically or anything like that, but it's a way of putting simple traversal mechanics and almost rhythm traversal mechanics into a very interesting context that makes it fascinating from start to finish.
Gives meaning to something actually you're doing very repetitive things.
Yeah, exactly right. And just on that level, I think like Soul Rush is missing something for me that it's just not quite. It's not quite. Not tasty enough, really. There's nothing to get stuck into with it, and it's a kind of a frivolous, fun thing if you like the idea of the skating. But I don't think I quite recommend it.
Are you like? What does it feel like? I mean, is this sort of? Does it feel like difficult second album, or does it feel like an experiment that took a certain course? What does it feel like?
Perhaps the latter, like perhaps a tech demo that felt amazing, but then didn't get to final, a stage of, I don't know. It's hard to speculate about these things, but it feels like a completely different game mechanically. Like it doesn't. So I think it was initially intended to be a sequel. It doesn't feel like Hyper Light Drifter at all. Even though they're kind of like some surface level similarities in art style and stuff, it really doesn't feel like all the stuff that made Hyper Light Drifter kind of fascinating and difficult, and the ambiguity of its storytelling and the way that just with 2D pixel art, it was very evocative as well and mysterious. This just lacks all of that for me.
Yeah, that's a shame, because like it did have like, I think that first trailer they showed maybe 2 years ago, maybe more. Like that was, you'd think, they're going to do it again, but look, now it's in 3D, and now they've probably got more budget. It's going to be one to watch. It's a shame.
Yep. I dislike bringing up games just to rag on them, but I think like you, I felt that I saw that, oh wow, it's from Heart Machine. This could be awesome. I loved Hyper Light Drifter, but maybe it's just going for a totally different crowd as well. Like it is a big budget release that was all over the front page of the PlayStation Store when I picked it up, and the art looks amazing, and it does sell itself literally, because that's why I bought it. So yeah, maybe they're trying to go for a different type of experience. Well, they obviously are, because it is a completely different type of experience, Hyper Light. And I don't want to be the guy who's just like, I just want a sequel to Hyper Light. Well, I kind of do. What have you been playing, Alex?
Been playing a funny old thing. I've been playing Dungeon Encounters. Have you come across it?
No, I haven't.
So it's the most bare bones Japanese RPG that you could possibly make. So it's it's JRPG in the sense that it's produced by a Japanese team headed by Hiroyuki Ito, who worked on various amazing, sort of landmark Japanese RPGs like the Final Fantasy series, Final Fantasy Tactics,
cool.
all those kinds of things. This game is very different in the sense that you walk around a dungeon which is just a grid, like
I'm looking at
a labyrinthine kind of grid of squares, and the only features in these labyrinths of squares are alphanumeric letter combinations, some white, some black. The black ones are monsters, and the white ones are things like healing fountains and resurrection shrines and shops and things like that. And when you fill a square, you get this little boom noise, and you see the sort of like a count fill up at the bottom left corner. You've got the total number of squares that you've walked over and filled in total across the whole game. And at the top left corner, you've got the number of squares to fill in the particular floor of the dungeon you're in right now. Aside from that, your character is 3D, but sort of like just walking completely in this abstract space. Your character is a party of 4, but the lead character, as you see, is 3D. There will be a little sound, like there's like ambient sounds, kind of that match the scene that you're in. So the first few floors are kind of a dank sounding dungeon. So there's sort of dripping sounds and whistling wind and that kind of thing. Soon you go into a grassland, so you get this sort of wonderful kind of breeze sounds and kind of just rustling grass and stuff. Accompanied that, you kind of get this sort of the backdrop when you're in the kind of first few levels is kind of inky stained, kind of nice, kind of understated inky stained kind of map background sort of thing, parchmenty thing. Once you get into the grass, you get these kind of, it's a sort of greenish. There's kind of like light rays coming down, and these kind of little kind of bits of grass kind of just sort of gently waft across the screen. So you kind of, weirdly enough, like if it's very atmospheric, but completely in this abstract thing. It's fucking awesome.
This is great. I'm looking at pictures of it now. This is a brave art direction.
It really is.
These dungeons.
I have no idea how this project got signed off. I have no idea, because it is really brave, and it is a project about totally stripping back the tenets of JRPG design to the basics. So you are thinking about your party and when you ought to go back to kind of heal up, to sort shit out, to go to shops to heal up and those kinds of things. And you're thinking about battle strategies all the time. And the battles, and just the game, the design of the battles, each individual element of the battle design will sound boring. It's just, but in concert, they make a system which sustains. I mean, I've played about 8 hours now of battle after filling squares and after battle and healing up and a battle, and I'm still playing and I want to play more.
Wow.
So there's some really interesting things about the design. So one of them is that each character, each of your party members has 2 defense gauges, or two defense stats, okay, and a health stat. One of the health stats is for physical damage, and the other health stat is for magical damage. There's no elements in this. There's no fire magic or water magic or wind magic or whatever. It's just magic or physical damage. And these, the 2 gauges on them against physical and magical damage, they're like a shield. So that when an enemy hits you with a physical attack, it will take damage off that shield. And that shield is totally regenerated after battle. So you are able to stay in the dungeon as long as you can keep your shield up and therefore not avoid getting your health damaged. You can just stay down indefinitely. That's supported by the fact that when you use magic, it doesn't use mana. There's no mana, nothing at all. So essentially your characters are 3 gauges. The health gauge is the thing that can be tricky to get back again. That's because there are no health potions. Nothing like that. There is an ability to heal characters up during a battle, which I have unlocked. But that only has 4 charges, and that is one of the very few. The abilities are one of the very few things that have charges to them. So you've got this health thing you ought to be thinking about, but actually your health is kind of low, so that in many cases, when you're fighting creatures that are of around the same level as you, if they do get through to your health, get through your defenses, they will probably kill you. If you lose some health, you're likely to lose all your health, unless you're fighting kind of lower class enemies, in which case you'll be probably fine. So there's these abilities that you're thinking about, and you'll need to recharge them now and then. It's actually a real hassle to retrack your steps, but the way this game, it's just so you're walking through these labyrinths, and you do have to backtrack. You have to walk all the way back again. Enemies get restocked every time you re-enter a floor. So you'll probably have to battle stuff on the way back up if you need to go back to the shops and things. You will have to go a long way. It takes a long time. But luckily you can actually just put the move speed really high, and you just hold down the cursor keys. You just hold the cursor keys. It has like Pac-Man style controls in the sense that that you move really, really quickly in a straight line, zoom straight along these squares. If you're going kind of left, if you hold down up, you'll take the first up route that comes along. So you just go zooming on through the dungeon. Like it's good, and it's a long way, but there are little ways that the game kind of gives you little glimpses of making it a little bit easier. So, for example, you sort of reasonably early on, you will unlock an ability which allows you to move up a floor to the same grid location that you're currently on. The ability will only work if there is actually an open bit of dungeon floor at that location. So yes, if you're lucky, you can kind of go, yeah,
Right.
we've gone up a whole floor. But usually in kind of practice, you're kind of like scooting around, just trying out in places to see whether you can find some floor above. And that sounds really annoying, but I keep discovering things like new abilities that it gives you, which alleviate irritations in the UI. So, for example, another thing is that when you start the game, the view doesn't allow you to see an awful very far in around you, so that you can't really see that whether this labyrinthine kind of offshoot that you decided to go down, if you're desperate to find something useful, like maybe there's a shrine nearby, you can kind of, you better see it and you'll know that it's worth going down there. At least worth fighting that monster that's in the way, kind of thing. At some point you will unlock an ability which zooms the view out. Suddenly now you can see more. And it's like, that's a whole chunk of kind of like friction that it's placed in my way, and I've kind of learned to get around. And now it's going, right, okay, don't have to worry about that anymore. But now there'll be other layers of things you're thinking about. Because, at that point, it's also kind of opened up the number of different weapons you've got. Like, you've got spells which are able to affect all the enemies at once. You've got flying enemies, which sword attacks won't affect at all because you can only hit them with magic or range damage. You're thinking about some of the kind of equipping your party with different kind of amulets and kind of things like that, which kind of increase damage and that kind of thing. But you have such a small number of slots, for your equipment and things. And so you're really thinking hard about the kind of party that you want to give, like, the magical, because the magical shield and the physical shield, they will come out of the clothes that you wear. Hats, right, usually for the magic, and kind of, sort of armor and things for the, for physical. And like, so it's so far, the number of things that it wants you to be concentrating on and just really thinking about, like, is a sort of like a fairly small list, but it gets richer and richer and richer as it comes on. And as soon as it introduces something new, which comes really subtly, you don't feel that it's kind of like, oh, and now it's time to do the thing. It just comes really organically. And but then you suddenly realize, oh, I'm not having to do that anymore. That's really interesting. It's so fucking smart. Like,
that's crazy. When you describe stuff like not being able to see quite far enough, and then an upgrade kind of unlocking the ability to see far enough, that feels like such a, like, that I find, based on the description, I would find that excruciating. Like, it would be like, the game has chosen to impose such a kind of arbitrary limit on what I can see in the space, that just having to sort of unlock the ability to overcome that just feels like nonsense progress.
You can see quite far enough, like, beforehand, because you don't feel that it's constrained. Like, there was actually, I did look in the mirror. I do remember looking in the settings to see, oh, like, can I zoom the view out a bit? And I didn't really get that it was actually part of the game's design, or, and then suddenly realized that, oh no, that is part of the game. That's a really intentional thing. And it wasn't that it was annoying. It's that, oh, I think I can get an advantage if I could see further. And then it gives you, and then like, oh, now you've got an ability that allows you to do that. But the abilities, they all depend on, I think, adventure points, or it's a special currency which unlocks over time as you sort of fill more squares, as you adventure more. As you kind of go further, you'll get more of these kind of adventure points, whatever they're called, which allow you to, and because each of the abilities has a adventure point costs. So you're equipping a certain loadout. And I've got now more abilities than I can actually equip at the moment. So I'm having to make choices over what I want. Like, what is the game I want to play there? It's really it really. I think that Hiroyuki Ito, the kind of like the kind of lead behind this, he has a really, like, he said something interesting in an interview, because he also was behind Final Fantasy 12. And Final Fantasy 12, of course, is the game in which you program your party.
Yeah.
Which again, like, what an absolutely kind of visionary thing to do, because it is what you're doing during Final Fantasy 7, Final Fantasy 6, whatever. You know, you are basically doing little processes, routines. Like, you figured out that that enemy, it's susceptible to fire, so I'll be using the fire spell then. And so it's these if-then statements that you're doing kind of naturally, you know, and manually. And Final Fantasy 12 said, hey, don't have to do it manually anymore. Invent your little program, and you program it in, and, you know, and just like stunning. Like, I was fascinated by that first time I heard about it, you know, when it came out. So he was behind this, and it's evident that he is really interested in this stuff. So he said in an interview, and we'll put the link for this in the show notes, but he said that the basic design for battles in this is something that allows the players to do the following repeatedly. Like, information that you see on the screen goes towards a prediction. So, like, if I do that, then maybe I'll be able to clear it, which goes to an execution. So the player tests the strategy they came up with, which then goes into results. Like, if it all goes well, if things turn out okay, then great, and if not, then they can rethink the strategy. Like, both, he says that both titles, so that's Dungeon Encounters and Final Fantasy 12, were created based on this. So they don't have a causal relationship where one inspired the other, but they're kind of like the same reflection of this sort of testing of theory and things. And, like, yeah, I totally see that in Dungeon Encounters as well. Like, you know, the battles are very much based on the active time system, which Ito designed back for Final Fantasy 4, Final Fantasy 5. I think he came up with that original design, where you've got a counter, like a gauge filling for all the characters, all the enemies and your characters, based on their speed stat. And so you're waiting for them to be able to take that turn. So your battles are kind of real time while also being turn based. So these battles in Dungeons Encounters are exactly based on that. So you're constantly watching gauges and thinking, right, I'm going to attack that one first, and then by the time the other one's about to attack me, these characters will be ready to attack that, and then they won't be able to, you know, blocking hits by removing threats. Man, Tom, it's such a good game. It sounds
delicious.
It's just, yeah, like, and it's just so spare and so kind of, it just wants you, to think about one thing. Yeah, I'm into this.
It's interesting. The tactics games were extremely crunchy, stat driven. You know, adjacency bonuses and lots of, you know, just actually loads and loads of information.
Yeah.
Whereas it feels like this is just kind of just gives you some essential information that with interesting ways to use it in a very sparse environment.
Yeah.
Which is, I mean,
pretty, then ask you to do it like every 10 seconds, like every 15 seconds.
It stays interesting for 8 hours as well.
Yeah. Oh, and the other thing I was going to say, like, the power curve is just like, you know, it is like one of those ones where you've got your attack is 100. And then the next weapon, like, now your attacks are 600. It's like, oh my fucking God, yes. And it means you suddenly stuff that was threatening is completely, like, arbitrary. But, you know, of course it's balanced, and the enemies you're attacking, you know, are now commensurately, they're also threatening. But it's... oh my God! And there are so many other things. There are riddles that you come across. So I mentioned before.
How? What, on the grid?
So I mentioned before that that when you're going around, like, the only things that you see are these alphanumeric numbers, or, like, you know, codes, 2 letters or two character codes on the ground. And white ones are like, and you learn that, like, 0, 1, that's the one for the stairs that go downwards, and 0, 2 are the ones for the stairs that go upwards. And you sort of learn this stuff. And there's actually, in the menu, there is a list of all the most recent iterations of the things that you'll find in the dungeon. And there are also these riddles, and they are all around the 30s. Like 30 was the first one I think I found, and 31, 32. So it's because it goes up sort of hexadecimally. And the riddles will be, when you examine them in the menu, it'll be like a sequence of numbers with some missing, and then it'll have X, Y, Z, or like A, B, C. Okay, and then below it'll say ABC equals X, Y, Z. Now, you quickly realize that X and Y, like the map coordinates, and you can always see the map coordinates at the top of the screen. So the riddles are basically are taking you to map location, like grid locations, if you can solve the riddle. And so, like, it just seems so arbitrary and seems so kind of slight, but like you go, oh yes, I've got to go to that place. And so you go up a couple of floors and you go there and you find this kind of, amazing weapon that you've not tried out before. And like, yeah, no, that was really worth it. But there are also these much more organic and kind of systemic kind of little quests that you find yourself going on. So when you can only have 4 characters in your party, and when somebody is KO'd, you can leave them behind at that location, but you can only pick characters up where they were left. So if you left somebody on the 6th floor at location sort of X 63 Y 42, they will stay there, and you actually got a list of where this great big group of kind of NPCs, long list of NPCs, and where they are. Some of them are called wandering, and you don't know where they are, and you will discover them over time where they are. And some of them like are really powerful, really high level. There's one who is a cat, and he's called Sir Cat. So that's so I'm going to be fucking hunting that guy out.
Absolutely.
But sometimes you can be petrified, and if a character is petrified, turned to stone, you can't move with them anymore because they can't move. They're turned to stone, so you have to leave them where they are, and you have to go off and just leave them behind. And you may well have kind of, they might be quite high level, and you may not have any characters that you can easily access kind of maybe at the start of the game, or they might be just distributed all over the fucking dungeon where you've just left them or whatever. Yeah. So you are going to have to find what's called a Gorgonz Altar. I think it's called a Gorgonz Altar, Gorgonz something or other. And that, when you use it, when you go to it and use it, allows you to cure a petrified character at a given map location. So you have to remember, you go in your list and you note where they are, and then put that in the thing, and then now you can pick them up. So you can now go back to them and pick them up again. And I got totally fucked up. I lost 3 characters to petrified. I had one character KO'd, and the only reason I was able to restart was that I had characters still on the first level. I now have no characters on the first level, and that I understand now means that if I die, then the whole game is over.
Whoa.
So I have to be really careful, and it means that there is a real sense of threat. Like it feels like a padded threat in the sense that I can run from enemy from battles, and I can kind of play it carefully, and I can maybe move characters around and train them up so they're going to be powerful. But there's I had to embark on this mission of saving a bunch of characters because I'd left them all petrified across the dungeon, and that was just systemic, just emerged from these simple rules about kind of petrification and KO and just things being consistent. Like when you leave something somewhere, they're left there forever. I'll stop banging on now. It's really interesting game.
It sounds fascinating. And I do have to reiterate that the game functionally looks like a crossword grid has been mapped onto a flat piece of artwork.
That's the way to say it. Yeah, it looks like a crossword grid.
That is what this thing looks like. So for so much complexity and sort of risk taking and party building and interesting leveling system to come out of that is, I think it looks like it's on Switch as well. So
Yeah.
it's my new bathtub game.
Oh, it's a real kind of like lying on the sofa on a Sunday afternoon.
Yeah, that sounds.
He just flows, and you're just going.
That sounds perfect.
And watching the number go up. It's really good. Oh, there is some story as well, but like the barest way, like the characters, the NPCs, they all have little bios which are kind of quite sweet. You know, about the reasons why they're in the dungeon and that kind of thing. It's very spare, but it's there. It's enough. Dungeon Encounters. It's a good game.
One I will buy shortly. I've been playing something else actually. If you would like to talk about Returnal.
Yeah. Oh, I was wondering whether you're going to get that.
I got it
because we should announce that both Tom and I are proud new owners of PS5s.
Yeah, we both followed the. I don't know how you did, Alex. I followed some Twitter accounts that were posting daily about when stock was going to be in. I just wanted one before Christmas because I wasn't sure whether I'd be able to get one before like Horizon Forbidden West and stuff came out, and Elden Ring in February. Those are the games I'm really, really looking forward to early next year. But one of the launch titles is Returnal, which is a third-person roguelike shooter from, of all developers, Housemarque, who made Nex Machina is probably the game I've played of theirs the most, which is a twin-stick arcade shooter, an absolutely really exciting and lavish one, very, very flashy. And I think they did Resogun as well. Yeah. A history of making great twin-stick action games. And here they come in with like this really, looks great, like a big budget sci-fi roguelike third-person shooter for the PlayStation 5 as a launch title. And you play an astronaut who's crashed on a serious alien planet, and basically it looks like Geiger, but with enemies from the robot tentacle enemies from The Matrix is pretty much how it all looks. Every time you die, you go back to your spaceship and have to wander again from room to room, and the randomized generation of the levels is basically a series of rooms that are shuffled, and also within each room, any number of combinations of enemies can appear. And sometimes just there could be like a room that's just full of the worst enemies, and it's awful, and you'll set your progress back loads. And then you could go to the same room on the next run and be completely empty and just have a chest with an amazing gun in it or something. So you never quite know what you're going to find, even as you get used to the environments. I found there's enough variety there in the way it kind of lets you through the levels, and you eventually kind of pick up little abilities like a melee ability that gets you lets you access more caches, which let you pick up more health and more guns and more upgrades, and therefore get further. So even though there's no saving and it's all starting again from the beginning, there are little progression mechanics that you pick up, little abilities that help you get shortcuts and stuff like that. And it's actually the best thing about it is the combat itself. It's incredibly responsive, kind of 60 frames per second with a fantastic dodge. Really interesting weapons with lots of kind of nuance to them that can spawn with various just little upgrades that you come to know. Like you might have like a snub-nosed version of a pistol that kind of changes the spread of bullets, and the same can happen with the kind of shotgun equivalent. And then you get like miniguns and various other archetypes that you unlock as you go through. It's broadly good. The experience of being surrounded by enemies with this fantastic sound design where you can tell when enemies are charging up near you, and with the Housemarque trademark of it's a bullet hell game as well. So there are kind of like lasers tracking you everywhere as you're fighting. There are enemies that shoot out like patterns of energy balls that you have to dodge through and dodge around, and the movement systems are agile enough to make this feel really good. And when I get hit by a laser beam or an attack, I always feel like it is ultimately my fault, which is a really important thing with these combat systems. The worst feeling you could get is like, well, that was just total bullshit. That thing just went through a wall and hit me with a splash damage that I could never have seen. To me, the combat in this is super consistent, and I'm like, oh yeah, I should have just like not even gone into that corridor with these types of enemies spitting acid. Like, why would I go in there?
But do you have a sense of kind of how you might deal with them, or or a faith that you will be able to deal with them in the future?
Basically, you get to learn their attack patterns a lot of the time, and you get to learn that some of them are particularly vulnerable to melee and have quite predictable sort of charge moves and that sort of thing. So it's very like it's very good detailed combat system in terms of the enemy behavior is really kind of varied and interesting to get around. There is giant bat things that hover turn red and then swoop, and once they get to the stage where they're turning red and they're close enough, they're very, very difficult to dodge away from. You're pretty much going to get hit. So you're sort of like keeping an eye out for as they go red. So you have to take those ones out first. But even as you're dodging, like these globs of energy coming from this different type of enemy across the other side of the arena. And then, of course, sometimes these massive red ones will spawn, or these giant tree dudes who kind of can shoot these gorgeous homing missile attacks from across the other side of the arena. And all this is happening at once. And when you're in the zone, in the middle of the chaos and sort of solving the combat problem, it feels fantastic. But I really dislike the roguelike execution of it. And to me, like you fight these bosses, and again, these are good challenges. They're really well designed combat challenges. But the boss run back is a thing. You know, the Dark Souls thing where you die and you have to run through loads and loads of stuff just to get another try at the thing. Is really prohibitive in this. And I'm in the second sort of world area, and I've reached the boss for that. And actually, to be honest, like it doesn't seem that challenging. I think with another few goes, I'll be able to get to him. But I quit at that point because the run back to get to it is just so arduous and quite arbitrary. Like you can just get some bad luck and not get any good weapons, and go into a few rooms that have just loads and loads of enemies, and you can't quite deal with it. And then it's back to start again. It's like, wow, it's going to take half an hour to get to this thing. And at that point, it's just like, oh no, and that combined with one simple thing, and that is the fact it starts you with the handgun every single time.
Is it like every run or every session?
Every run.
Right.
It's like you lose all your weapons. There's only like one persistent currency that you keep called ether, which if you've got enough of it and you need a lot of it, you can unlock checkpoints in certain rooms to perhaps like make that boss run back easier. But it's a lot of ether that you need to collect to be able to do that. And so if it sent me back and let me have a different gun every now and then, or a different something that let me kind of enjoy the mechanics of the game with a little bit more variety, I would still be playing it. The fact there's something particularly depressing about waking up again with this piece of crap pistol every single time, and then basically just
thing, is it?
having to spend 10 to 15 minutes like desperately hoping for a drop that isn't that thing. And I've got my favorites of the other weapons. There's one carbine that's really fun to use. The shotgun's quite fun, but I prefer having the range. It's not like the handgun's terrible. It's kind of interesting that you can also fire for very like consistent, accurate shots, but you can also feather the button very quickly to just quickly blast stuff if they're close enough. Nice, that's good weapon design, but it feels rubbish. Like when you go back to it, it's like, oh, this again. I just had a minigun, and there's another thing where you can a really nice idea where you can slap parasites onto your spacesuit and they kind of get onto your body, and you can see them writhing away as you're fighting. It's kind of brilliant and disgusting. And they give you like one buff and one negative effect. And negative effects could be anything from your special abilities recharge a little bit more slowly, or something as simple but as devastating as falls do damage now, which I had once and I will never have again, because it's surprising how many like big drops are actually built into the game. So I think purely designed around that particular one debuff, because the drop into the very first boss arena is this massive fall through a hole. And if you've got that parasite on you, you just take an automatic damage at the start of the boss fight. And it's like, that's pretty devastating. Unless you've gotten loads and loads of health like through the course of the run, it's like, oh, I don't really want that parasite. And there are ways to strip them off. And it's a really interesting, also you can get buffs that say, oh, the more parasites you have, the more powerful you are. And that changes your whole run, because you're slapping these things all over your face and all over your back, and just like trying to get as many as you can, and sort of trying to work around all of the negatives. But without any of that, to lose all of that, and then lose the core minigun, and lose the kind of the awesome kind of weapon proficiency I've built up. That's a level that you build by fighting, and the higher it gets, it basically means that all future weapon drops are higher level. So by doing more fighting, you get higher level weapon drops. Very good. And for all that to just be reset to 0 and give you this fucking pistol, it's so bad. I can't abide by it, because it's such a cool, mysterious world with a great combat system, and just please. I think I probably would have. I think whatever gun it would have been boring. But particularly that one is something particularly like, you feel so like pathetic, and it's like it's the sudden vision of the amount of work you're going to have to do to get back to as much fun as you were having a minute ago. Yeah, it's just paralyzing for the game, unfortunately. And
what is actually causing the game over? Like, because you said that you got the boss run thing. So are there lives or something? Is there a certain
no,
number
you
of
die.
restarts?
No, you just die and then you go back to the start.
Okay.
Yeah, there's a particular item that you can buy. You have to be lucky enough for it to appear in a shop or to find it in a chest that lets you resurrect on the spot. But you can't rely on it. It's too you just can't rely on it showing up. So basically, the moment you die, you go back to the very start, back to shitty handgun times. And it's too much. It's too much of a drop in power level from the moment you're at your most powerful in the previous run to where you start again.
Yeah.
Which is just unrecoverable for me.
If they randomized it, if you had one random weapon, maybe of a certain sort of tier, would that alleviate it, do you think?
It would help. I think what would happen is people would just scum it.
You would, wouldn't you? Yeah.
Keep reloading until you get the one that you like. I mean, even if it was just a set of 3 basic guns you could choose from right away, with interesting drawbacks each, and one that you preferred a little bit, and then perhaps on a different run, it's like, oh, that didn't work quite so well. I'll start with the shotgun instead. So I don't know, something. I mean, I can't really design on the spot, but that is just such a feel bad moment, and it's something like other roguelikes don't have so much, which is interesting because I think being such a gear based, I don't know, because so many roguelikes are really gear based, so I don't know what it is about the combination of that and the fact that in a third-person shooter, the gun is so essential to the experience. The quality and styling of the gun, in addition to your traversal movement mechanics, is just absolutely vital. Whereas hitting something with a sword in a 2D dungeon in a different roguelike is just a different level of, it's nowhere near as essential to the experience as a weapon in a 3D environment.
Yeah.
And that's perhaps, for me, a fatal flaw for me with Returnal.
I was afraid about some of the reports, some of the reviews. Sort of, they talked about it being punishingly difficult, and I thought, so I went for Demon Souls instead.
Demon Souls is a much more comfortable type of difficulty, possibly because I've played so much.
It's a familiar pain. Grind.
Yeah. It's a familiar grind.
Did you buy that one as well?
I did. Yeah, I've been enjoying it.
How far? Where are you? I'm smashed. Before this, I was making another. I was just thought, right, I've got to upgrade. I've got to improve my weapons and just deal with this because I'm at the Tower Knight.
Oh no, I've not reached the Tower Knight yet. I'm still on the. I'm still in Cool Dragon Castle Place land.
Yeah.
So I've beaten the first boss, but I'm going over these ramparts, and these dragons are kind of dive bombing you and torching entire ramparts. Really, really cool. It looks amazing.
It's just stunning.
It's a gorgeous remake.
Every stone, you're just looking at the light just shining across flagstones and the level. And I have played Dark Souls on PC, and so therefore, it isn't revelatory being able to play it in 60 frames, but
huge difference.
But it is just so luxurious feeling. It just, oh God, this is so nice.
I still find so much of those games funny in quite a slapstick way, in terms of just the really dumb, slow roly-poly you do if you're wearing too much armor for your character and stuff like that, which I've always enjoyed about the games. It's great to see it in Demon Souls. I'm so kind of, this game is super comforting to me, which is surely not the intended experience. But there's a certain pattern to it that is just so pacifying. I just really, it's a nice warm cup of tea that's killing you every 5 minutes.
Brutal cup of tea.
Yeah.
There is something about the additional fidelity, just how beautiful it is that some of those kind of Dark Soulsy, Demon Soulsy sort of weirdnesses, the fact that a certain cart has a handle that's sticking out, and it will you'll just get caught on it, or the way that your character moves around it is just sort of weird. It's just Dark Soulsy, and it's something that you just accept, and because you get to know the levels so well, as you replay and replay, you just know that that's there, and you just step around it, or you get caught on it. It's familiar. It's a cup of tea. And but when you combine it with just how beautiful it looks, it does feel just reminds you of kind of oh no, you're not really in this amazing fucking rotting castle. and really you're playing a really another dumb game.
Yeah, swinging. It's weird how I'm so used to it that I don't question it anymore. But swinging a sword while going around a corner made of stone is just a whole thing I've just learned to navigate in that game. Like in terms of the direction. It's kind of impressive that there's a degree of sort of consistency to the fact your sword does bounce off stuff.
Yeah.
Which is good, and there is a kind of dance to the manoeuvring, but it's a kind of nonsense dance in the way that if you actually had a sword, you would just swing it with your right hand around the left hand bend, and not have to sort of like shuffle around your character's combos and stuff. A really weird way. I do also like that in the initial areas as well, you are actually fighting a lot of human opponents in just kind of pretty traditional combat garb. So it's I mean, even in Dark Souls, you're fighting undead and pretty high fantasy stuff straight away. So it feels, obviously there are massive dragons in Demon Souls immediately, but it's really kind of, there is something believably gritty about it actually, which is it feels like less of a horror game to me at the moment, though I'm sure it gets more like that. What I'm saying, like the first boss is a kind of like fleshy mass of spears that seems to be sort of like this mashed up regiment that's become a nightmare in the face of a demon. So no, it's still got all that good stuff.
And there's a big fat demon very early. In fact, don't you get that?
Yeah. Right, pretty much right away.
Big fat demon
with little wings, adorable, a giant awful cherub.
But then I did take a sort of quick tour of some of once the other levels were open. I did take a quick tour. I haven't played it. I haven't played Demon Souls since probably for a good 8 years or so. I didn't get that far with it back on PS3 back in the day, but did play it a bit, and I did remember the really dark level on all the sort of
I've heard about that.
The wooden stilts and things. I went back to there, and the creatures you're fighting in there, you won't be disappointed, Tom. They are
excellent. Is that also the poison level?
Yes, I believe so. Yes.
Yeah, everything's Blighttown. There's always a Blighttown.
It is Blighttown. It's proto Blighttown.
Yeah, fantastic. I can't wait to see it. I love that it sort of unlocks all the different areas, and it sounds like they all have a different sort of thing going on, except for one that's just really, really hard. That's its thing. They're all hard.
Hey, welcome to Hard World.
Good. I'm greatly enjoying my console gaming at the moment.
Hey, Tom. Sorry to all those listeners who want PS5 and are still in the kind of the waiting list for it. But have you noticed, the card things that you get for PS5 games where it kind of gives tips and things on the
you can sort of access missions and like skip to them and stuff.
That's right.
That kind of thing.
You press square on where you're at with thing, and it just loads the game, logs you in, takes you straight to your save. Bam.
Whoa.
You don't have to go through the splash screens or anything. It's amazing.
Power.
It's beautiful. And of course it loads in like 10 seconds.
Yeah, everything on that thing loads instantly, which is huge.
Sorry everyone.
Get excited about 4K 60 FPS gaming.
Apart from that, though, I've been playing it in 1080, and I've been playing Horizon Zero Dawn again.
I've been playing The Last of Us Part 2 again.
Yeah, I know. I'm going to do that next.
It's really, it looks amazing. Also, now I know what I'm in for with that game and how grueling it is. I've actually appreciated the storytelling a lot more.
Okay,
I've really enjoyed it. I've really enjoyed it. But yeah, I like that we're on the same trajectory. Oh, God of War is another one, obviously.
I might go back to that because I remember I played the whole thing, really enjoyed it. And then went back to it after playing for a good month on kind of PC games, 60 frames, went back to it and it was like walking through sludge.
Yeah.
How did I cope with this? So yeah, that'd be nice to go to on PS5.
That's really nice. Horizon's still lovely though. I was really excited about the blog post about combat, and it looks spectacular. Like there's loads of kind of tricks and gadgets you could combo together to attack people. You don't just hit things anymore with a really strangely sluggish staff attack in that game. Like there's loads of ingenuity you could apply to combat situations and stuff that looks really, really cool.
Yeah, because given the differences, and we're kind of pinballing around here. This is like the tour of what's free on PS5. What we've played before on PS5. Given the depth and nuance of the ranged weapons, like your melee is just non-existent. That's just like hit fast or hit slow, and probably
And
get
not
hit by the thing first.
Never ever hit fast as well. Like the wind up on it, it's a really strange attack. There's nothing quite like it in the 3D games. But for otherwise like just like movement and shooting and stuff, is relatively conventional. And so it's like the controls about drawing back your bow and zooming in and all of that stuff to shoot. And then you've got this attack when you get close with the staff where you press it, the quick attack. Then about like several seconds later, it will connect in apparently like a place far away from your character that you never could guess. Just like it's like, so if I hit it now in 2 seconds, I will hit that dinosaur about 7 feet away. It's so strange. It looks like they've kind of worked on that a lot. So I'm glad about that because that's one of the sort of sloppier aspects of the game. It felt like it's really cool though. You could sort of like you use a grappling hook and then just spring upwards to climb really fast. And then there's a kind of Zelda style. You know how in Zelda you can often pull out a leaf to float down.
Oh.
She's got a version of that, and then she could drop onto the back of a dinosaur and instantly hack it and start running around. It's that sort of stuff that is like, oh, that's the sandbox. That looks gorgeous as well. Very excited.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, that was one of the banner things I was hoping for. Oh man, some good gaming ahead.
Absolutely, there is, and I think it mostly kicks off in February now. Apart from the Matrix experience, of course, which potential game of the year.
It's going to change all of gaming, so unfortunately, we're not going to be interested in any of that shit.
That's true. We're going to have to change the podcast, aren't we? We're going to have to relearn games from scratch because Neo.
Maybe it's going to say, "What if this game was the real world?"
And then we'll say, "Yeah, yeah." Go on, tell me more. Oh look, there's a weird mirror. There's we're on the eve of the Halo Infinite campaign being released. Yeah. I'm really excited to try that. It looks like it's had some amazing write-ups and looks fantastic. And I've really enjoyed the multiplayer, so that could be a treat. Something we'll discuss a lot more soon.
Yeah. So just to give a quick update on the plans for the next. Actually, next week is going to be the Game of the Year pod, I think.
Hopefully, if we could get everyone together,
yeah,
that'd be really good.
I think I think we have got everyone together, and also I think we moved it. We were going to actually do it this week, but for a couple of reasons, but also because it would mean that we got a chance to play Halo before making judgments on all the other games. We're going to do it next week, so that's good. I'm looking forward to playing that as well. And I did play the multiplayer, and it did feel so much like coming home.
That's good. Very excited.
Well, I think that's all we have time for. Ce soir. You can hang out with us in our community on our Discord channel. You can find a link to our Discord with an invite on it at our website, which is crateandcrowbar.com. If you have yes, we've gone on about this quite a few times. We are still cogitating on the nature of what we should make the questions for, from questions bit that we've traditionally had at the end of the pod. If you do have ideas for what you would like to do, we want to do some kind of listener based, interaction-y stuff in the pod. If you've got ideas for how that could be, send them to us at questions@crateandcrowbar, or you can just send anything to us at questions@crateandcrowbar. You can also listen to the show on YouTube, where you'll also find our various spin-off projects. That's youtube.com/crateandcrowbar. The Crate and Crowbar is kindly funded by our Patreon backers. If you'd like to know more about supporting the podcast and its spin-offs, visit patreon.com/crateandcrowbar. And I think that's all the housekeeping. I have been Alex Wiltshire.
And I've been Tom Senior.
Thanks
for listening, everybody.
Excuse me one moment. The dog, who's been sleeping behind me, farting gently throughout our talk, has decided to get excited and he needs to go out of the room. So I will let that happen, and also let some fresh air in because I'm dying.
Suffering for the pod.